for me, one of the things that's great about the playability is that you can just pick it up and play. And if you're a DM, well, I can tell you it's going to be way easier than any other game, for sure. So hello, everyone. And today we welcome you to another episode of World Building. We're going to review some games again. So it's going to be one of my favorite today. So Fate.
Fate was released in 2013 through Kickstarter.
So for people who don't know Fate, it's a role-play heavy system that's really reliant on the skills of everyone at the table, not just the DM. So every player have a say in the world building and everything.
Everyone has to say something about the world building.
If you like world building and you're generally a player, I really recommend you push this game to your DM, just so you have a chance to have a say on everything, which is an amazing system for that.
If you're looking for simulation, it's not really the game for you. You really want to go more for another system if you want to just slay zombies.
Dragons, yeah, for sure. If you have insane ideas that you think you couldn't be able to make rule for it, Fate is definitely the best system you can use.
So for presentation, I think that Fate does a really good job. The cover is nice. The physical books are also nice.
Amazing.
It's really readable. They offer both a physical and a digital copy of the rule book. The structure of the rules are really good, in my opinion. Yeah, the only thing for me, it's the illustrations and the black and white interior that is a bit lacking.
Yeah, I think one of their big part for deciding to go for black and white is mainly for the price little thing. So for presentation, I gave it a 9 out of 10. For me, it's a beautiful book. I really like the illustration. Actually, I think they did a good job. The only thing that's kind of off-putting is the fact that they're all in different style. But I think that's what they were going for, just to show that you can do, a gritty kind of, suburban, murder mystery, or you can go and do mecha, and everything would just work, which is why I think they went for a different style. Which is interesting, but for sure, it's not as polished as some other role-playing game on the system. So that's why I gave it a 9 out of 10. I think that everything is in right order. Everything is easy to read. The images are great, but they could have done a better job at having a more permanent style, maybe something more stylish, just in general, which is why I removed 1 point from it.
And I'm going with an 8 for presentation. Again, same points, color, images, just a bit better. But apart from that, it's very good.
So we'll go into the second part, playability. So for me, playability is one of the things that I feel it doesn't get as well as some other system, for the reason that you need players that are good in role-playing to play. If you're a fan of video game and you hear Critical Role and then you're like, I want to try a role-playing game, and you start with Fate, you're going to be completely lost. This is not a game made for people who love to rely on the system or like to, cast Fireball all the time or something like that. It's really a system that is only as good as the player who plays it.
Yeah, it's for 3-dimensional characters.
Oh yeah, for sure.
So you need to be creative about your character. You need to be ready to role play really a lot, and you need to want to create a character that is really complex, and not just a character that's going to brush the surface and be, I'm a rogue, I'm an assassin, and that's all. You need to have a bit more depth to your character than that.
Yeah.
And that's what makes it a bit less approachable. It's still very much approachable because of how it's written and how the mechanics, how easy the mechanics are to use. But you still need to have that ease of role playing and of creativity.
And not just that, but you also need to be ready to, do a lot with it. Especially as a player, I feel it's a harder start than most role-playing game. For a DM, it's really easier. That's for sure. For playability, if you want to be a DM, it's your first game that you DM. It's a great game to pick because you don't have to do as much as every other game I've ever played. It's insane how much, especially if you have a scenario, if you take one of their scenario and just start playing, the DM is one of the easiest job, which is really weird, but that's how it is. And that's amazing. I just feel that it's just so fun to be able to just go and do a game like live. Like I could start a game whenever I want, which is a great thing about it, is that I don't need to prepare for 2 weeks in advance. I don't need to write down all my dungeons. I don't need to write down the story. I can create a story with the player and then decide what kind of challenge they will be facing. Why are they here? How do they interact with each other? That's all decided by the players and the DM and everyone together at the table, which is, for me, one of the things that's great about the playability is that you can just pick it up and play. And if you're a DM, well, I can tell you it's going to be way easier than any other game for sure.
So I gave it a 7 for playability.
I gave it an 8. So you can see that I'm always kind of praising a bit
bias.
More than Dalen. I think, yeah, but I don't think it's bias. I think the fact that I played a lot changed my vision of it for sure.
The people I play with and that I did my long games of GURPS with are all used to a system like GURPS that is very systematic and that everything has a rule for it. And then you get into a system like Fate that has almost no rules and it's almost all to up to the imagination and up to the creativity of the players. It's destabilizing for that type of player and it's difficult for them to get into it. So
yeah, for sure.
that influences a bit my experience of the game. Let me go on a tangent. Can I? So
yeah, sure.
Role-playing triangle. So at the top you have the gamification, the simulation, and then you have the role play. And any role-playing game is going to fall somewhere between these 3 points. If you want to take D&D as an example, it's very gamified. If you want to take GURPS as an example, it's very simulation driven. And if you want to take Fate as an example, it's very role play based. Mm-hmm. So it depends on what type of game you want to have.
Now for mechanics. For me, the mechanics of this game are perfect for what it wants to do. Just the way the fate points are just the fate economy that they call, which is like you start with a number of fate points. And then if you do actions or thing, people can say, well, depending on your character trait, maybe you would do it this way or stuff like that. Good or bad, they can give you fate point or you can receive fate point. Anyway, that whole thing at the table is really, really fun. So for me, I think the mechanics are just perfect for what they wanted to do. The character creation part where you have to write stories, then all your story intertwine with every other players. That's amazing for what they want to do. For sure, for the game, I mean, the stats are kind of basic for sure. I mean, the dice can give you up to a +4.
I'm going exactly in the same direction as you. So basically, it's very good at what it's trying to do, but the mechanics aren't really complex and they don't have a lot of depth. Because we said earlier, it's more for story-driven games. So here for mechanics, I gave it a 7 because I think it's more of I think it's limited by its style and it's okay. It does what it's trying to do very well. It's just if you want to have more complex rules, you're not going to get them here.
Yeah. But I gave it a 9 because I think it's my favorite rule set for multiple reasons. But one of the reasons we didn't talk about much is the fact that every skills is just, you can change them how you want, which is really great for when you want to do something really out there. One of the important things with Fate to understand is that this game is really terrible when you're using miniatures. It doesn't work. Don't use it with miniatures. It's
because I have a lot of terrain and strategy is important to me.
Yeah.
So I can appreciate good role play. I like role playing, but losing the strategy aspect of it really is something that's difficult for me. Then Immersion. I think there's not much to say here. 10 out of 10 for me.
Yeah, for me too. It's a 10 out of 10. I think it's rare that I'll give it 10 out of 10. As you said, for even if it's my favorite system, I still didn't give it a 10 out of 10 on every other one of my scores. But for this one, I have to go for a 10 out of 10. I think that if you're searching for a game for immersion, there's no game in the world that can get you as much in the story as Fate. This is just unbeatable.
I have one in mind. That's a game for another day. Since it's a story-driven game, it's difficult to give it a bad score for immersion.
I mean, for me, it's just...
once you get in the game, you're in the game.
Oh, yeah, there's no going out. There's no break. The game is really intense, too. For games that I've played, they make me really tired. Like, after an hour or two of play, I'm completely dead. Just because you're just in a different character. You're literally just playing a role. And for me, that's what I like the most about the gaming, for sure. It's things that I know I have different from other DMs is that for me, the story is always more important than the rule. For a game like that, for me, it's perfect. But it is tiresome, for sure. Now we'll get into support. So in this category, there's a lot of things that we need to talk about. Firstly, they have good website. I think they're pretty easy.
A good website. They have a decent website.
A good website. So something else they have for me is just support group. The game is really easy to buy. Most gaming stores will have the core rule book. I have bought mine at my local store, which is super important for me that they have support for local gaming store. The only thing is that some of the book, especially some Kickstarter special or stuff that they released later, can be a little bit harder to come by. I know for me, getting this Fate World was really easy, but Worlds in Shadow was harder to get. Usually what you find everywhere will just be Fate Accelerated and the core system. Some place will have the system toolkit, but it's not everywhere. And I think the system toolkit is really, really useful. If you want to get serious into Fate, I think that's a must. And then I have the space toolkit, but that's just for my robot game and my space game. So it's not for every game, but yeah. The only thing is that, some of the books are harder to find, which is for me a problem.
And I think the fact that it was released through a Kickstarter helps a lot for community building. So for support, I gave it a 9.
Like they don't tell you what each book do, which is something that for me is kind of frustrating. They say it for the core system, but like if you don't know what Fate World is, it's not super obvious. It's not like this is a campaign. You have campaign in that book. It's not Fate campaigns. Everything is kind of made for people that are really interested and really deep into roleplay. Which is why I gave it a 9 out of 10 because I can't give it a perfect score. I would.
Yeah, and I gave it a 9 out of 10 for support as well. That makes a final score of 79 for me.
And 89 for me. Like, if I have a choice of a game that I need to use, most of the time I will use Fate. Now I started to use BFD because, we're working on it. So that's a good thing to use it.
Would you buy Fate?
Yes, I have bought Fate. And that's not even all the thing of Fate I have. That's just what I had, clothes when I started filming. But That's just one of the stash of Fate stuff that I have. I have multiple dice set too. I love dice. So.
With the core rule set at $30 Canadian and the accelerated book set at $5, I think it's a reasonable price for this. Especially the accelerated one. $5 is difficult
for a whole system. Although it's impossible.
Battle for Diratia still beats it.
Yes, it's $0. You can just get it. Links are below in the description.
If you're looking for role-playing focused game, take a look at Fate. It's really good for that.
Don't pick it up if you're new. If it's your first role-playing game, don't pick up Fate. That's a big no. Take something else, like Battle for Diratia. If you have any games suggestion you want us to review, please put it in the comment. That's really appreciated. And download Battle for Diratia, try it out, send us your comments. What else could I plug? Also, we have merch, My Mini Factory. We have a movie that will come out called Shadow of the Conqueror. Maybe you didn't hear about it. You can check filmmaking with, which is super interesting. Also, check out our sponsor in the link below. We have a sponsor link for Kalimazil, which is pretty good. If you want to buy a really good sword, just click on that link.
Like, subscribe, get notified, and we'll see you in the next one.